Welcome, brothers and friends. It is the pleasure and honor of the Rubicon Masonic Society to bring us together this evening for part one of our 8-part virtual Masonic education series called Discovering Freemasonry. Each of these meetings will be recorded and possibly repurposed for future Masonic education. Therefore, if you attended any of our meetings earlier this year with the assistance of Lexington Lodge Number 1, you may notice that some of the previous ambiance of the video and music within the meetings will not carry over into this series. That being said, this setting is aimed to be very instructive with a progressive focus of a man's journey through Freemasonry. The Rubicon Masonic Society is an invitation-only private group of Master Mason Freemasons located in Lexington, Kentucky. The purpose of Rubicon Masonic Society is to establish a deeper understanding and connection with Freemasonry, its traditions, practices, and further cementing the brotherhood of its members and guests through conviviality and unity outside of the lodge. Brothers and friends, my name is Brian Evans, and I am the chairman of the Rubicon Masonic Society. I want to thank you for your attendance and participation this evening. Throughout this series, you will meet many members within Rubicon, as well as various special guest appearances from Masons who will be sharing their personal experiences and knowledge about specific topics within our fraternity. My co-hosts for this series are worshipful brother Dr. John W. Bizak, past master and vice chairman of the Rubicon Masonic Society, and Dan Kimball, past master and honorary member of Rubicon Masonic Society. Again, thank you for joining us this evening. Let us begin. Worshipful brother Lyle Van Adder, chaplain of Rubicon Masonic Society, will you please deliver the opening charge this evening?
Of course. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, brothers, let us pray. Great architect of the universe, be present in the hearts and minds of all those here tonight. Grant that what transpires during this education series be a light to the faithful among all faiths that honor God through service and devotion to the unity of all mankind and all existences. Invest all those who speak and ask questions with a pure understanding of your divine wisdom and the ability to communicate and realize the principles of our order. May we succeed by the honor of your holy name. Amen.
It be.
Promoted be. Thank you, Brother Chaplain. Brothers and friends, the agenda this evening is as follows. In just a moment, we will outline the purpose, protocol, and recommendations for these meetings. We will then proceed directly into part one of our 8-part series. Following the presentation, we will open up the meeting to all attendees for discussion and live question and answer. Following the discussion period, we will provide details on future education meetings, as well as final comments in preparation to closing. Before we get started, worshipful brother Kimball, will you please read the disclaimer for our attendees this evening?
Brothers and friends, a brief disclaimer. There's a tremendous amount of misinformation about Freemasonry that currently exists in both the virtual and non-virtual forums. Only factual information capable of being independently verified and consistent with accepted academic research standards will be presented in this series. While the information presented during this series will be factual, any opinions expressed during the various presentations will be those of the presenter and do not necessarily reflect the views of any lodge or Grand Lodge or the Rubicon Masonic Society. All material contained in this presentation is suitable for Masons and non-Masons. No private information, including but not limited to passwords, signs, grips, or other elements of Masonic ceremonies will be disclosed during any part of this virtual series. By participating in this virtual meeting, you consent to the use of your name, likeness, and voice by the Rubicon Masonic Society. This entire presentation is the property of the Rubicon Masonic Society and may not be used without the written permission of the Rubicon Masonic Society.
Thank you, worshipful brother Kimball. Worshipful brother Bizak, will you please read the purpose of our series, Discovering Freemasonry, for our attendees, please?
My pleasure, brother. Brothers, the purpose of this educational series is to deliver a factual and foundational overview of the world's most ancient and honorable fraternity, beginning with a man's initial contact within the fraternity, the man's progression through Masonic degrees, and the life path of the man as a Mason in his daily pursuit for self-improvement by applying the lessons and the tools of the craft in his life.
Thank you, Worship Brother. Brothers, the protocol for these meetings are as follows. As you already know, these are not tiled meetings. Masons and non-Masons are welcome to attend and participate. Therefore, please be mindful that anything discussed this evening should be suitable for Masons of all degrees as well as non-Masons. Gentlemanly manners are to be expected at all time. There will be no alcohol, no smoking, no food, no foul language will be permitted. There will also be no discussion of politics or religion at any time. Attendees will be removed if not following protocol. In an effort to best assure that this virtual meeting is an enjoyable experience for all attendees, we respectfully recommend and request the following. Recommended attire for each meeting is coat and tie. Please type your name and the lodge you are from under your picture or video to identify yourself to others. If you are non-Mason, you may just simply type guest next to your name. Please be patient should any technical difficulties occur. Please enable your video camera so all other attendees can see you. Please reduce background noise and keep your microphone muted when not speaking. Please be kind and turn off all other computer programs and try to eliminate all outside distractions in your environment. Brothers and friends, the title of our 8-part Masonic education series is Discovering Freemasonry. The brothers within Rubicon have worked extremely diligently in order to prepare and provide you and the outside world with factual information and an overview and introduction to the philosophies and principles of Freemasonry. I want to reiterate again that this is not a program to detract from the initiatory experience, nor to reveal passwords, grips, steps, or any part or parts of Masonic ritual that is considered sacred or private. Upon our studies and surveys in and outside of Rubicon, we have consistently learned that new and even veteran Masons were never provided an explanation of the fundamentals that can be delivered in a basic overview such as this. Hence the birth of this series. Here are the Masonic topics that you can expect to receive education on now through the end of the year. Episode 1, which is tonight, we will be talking about and answering the question, what is Freemasonry? Episode 2 will be a discussion on the path that one takes to becoming a Freemason. Episode 3, we will dive into the degree of the entered apprentice. Episode 4 will be the fellowcraft degree. Episode 5 will be the Master Mason degree. Episode 6, we will discuss the legend of Hiram Abiff. Episode 7, we will discuss what it means and what it is like to live as a Freemason. And episode 8, we will discuss the continuing commitments of a Freemason. Please understand that in the period of time allotted within each of these episodes, it will be impossible for us to conduct anything other than an overview of each topic. We encourage you to remember and not to assume that all men enrolled in this series are at the same level of Masonic instruction, and some may not be Masons at all. While some participants will undoubtedly desire a more in-depth discussion, others will be encountering some or all of this information for the first time. Those who desire more information to what is presented within each of these episodes may be directed to specific books, papers, and websites that will assist the purpose of quality academic and Masonic knowledge. Tonight we will be answering the question, what is Freemasonry? We have broken this answer down into 4 sections. First, Worshipful Brother Bizak will present on the unfolding of speculative Freemasonry, followed by Worshipful Brother Kimball, who will present on the aim and purpose of Freemasonry. Third, I will present on the suitability of interested men and expectations of Freemasonry. And finally, our very special guest and good friend presenter this evening, Worshipful Brother Tom Jackson, past Grand Secretary of Pennsylvania, will deliver his closing comments, which will lead us into the question and answer section of the evening. Worshipful Brother Bizak, what is Freemasonry? Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, brother. Friends, brothers, this part of the presentation is not designed to be a comprehensive one. It's an abridged overview so that we might start this evening with a collective understanding of what led to the development and organization of the first Grand Lodge and how events of the time unfolded toward that formation. Now, eventually every Freemason asks, when and where did Freemasonry start? And there's many books and films and internet sites that offer the curious an assortment of ideas, many provided by Masons who over the past 3 centuries have ransacked antiquity to discover a model for organized Freemasonry. The origins of organized Freemasonry, however, is found in a time when record keeping was lacking, a time when the vast majority of people could not read or write. So much of its history is left open to imaginative interpretations and loosely based romantic and many unsubstantiated theories. Most accounts tell us that organized Freemasonry grew out of the work of medieval stonemason guilds, and in one way it did, but it took many different events and time for it to unfold into what started as organized Freemasonry in 1717. And when it comes to trying to demonstrate how guilds evolved into what we think of today as Masonic lodges, Masonic historians are challenged because medieval stonemasons were not particularly adept at forming powerful guilds, at least in comparison to other trades, or keeping records. In medieval times, practically every trade had a strong guild of its own. Every trade, that is, except stonemasons. The reason was, contrary to what appears to have been a building boom in the Middle Ages, that's roughly 500 to 1500, there was simply not enough work for stonemason guilds to become as robust as other trade guilds. Most buildings in medieval Europe were not made of stone, but of wattle and daub, which was a combination of twigs, straw, clay, and lots of mud, and even animal manure. There was simply not much demand for the services of stonemasons as there was for mill workers, carpenters, and thatchers, and common laborers. Furthermore, stone, if used, could be dry laid, or mud or straw together by common laborers for small houses and buildings and some bridges. So the idea that expert architects and professionally trained stonemasons were needed for anything except massive construction projects is commonly overstated. Nevertheless, when time came to build or renovate castles, an abbey, or construct a major project like a cathedral, stonemasons were recruited and in large numbers from all areas of Europe. Again, operative stonemasons were building things, but they were not as widely in demand or organized compared to other trades and crafts. The projects that were constructed by the trained stonemasons did draw considerable attention, not only for the size of some of those projects, but because of the expert craftsmanship required to design and construct them. Now, we know from records that stonemason guilds that did exist were rich with regulations. They had rituals. They had many myths about their origins and their history. They used an apprentice system, and there was a need to protect, as it were, the knowledge of geometry so that few would have that information, thus channeling more work and higher wages for those who had that knowledge and the skills to put it to work. So while we can certainly find in medieval Europe the construction of Gothic cathedrals, castles, bridges, waterways, and some roads built by stonemasons guilds, it was the influence of the Renaissance that began to emerge in Scotland's capital, Edinburgh, that offers sufficient and verifiable evidence that the roots of speculative Freemasonry can be traced, if for no other reason than the Scots left better records of what went on in their lodges. Now, the Renaissance is generally agreed to have taken place from around 1400 to 1700. And it was during that 300-year period that we see a rediscovery of classical philosophy, literature, and art as a result of increased interaction between different cultures and the rediscovery of ancient Greek and Roman texts. There was an emergence of humanism, scientific inquiry, different artistic and technological innovations, and of course the impact of wars and conflict. So here is where we need to ask the question: if Masonic guilds of the Middle Ages are not the clear link between operative and speculative Masonry, what is? And we know that there's writings called the old charges, some handed down writings, some passed through memorization. They were mostly operating procedures, standards, behavioral guides, rules for hiring and selection that also included lessons in manners, how to treat people fairly, methods used in the guild, and the pulling on and from some wisdom about life in general from the cultures of ancient society and religious parables. And we know those old charges were used to draw on many of the specifics we find in what's been called the most important document in Masonic history. And that's Anderson's Constitutions of 1717. Now, we also know that after the first 21 years of organized speculative Freemasonry, that first Constitution was revised, and other documents in 1725 and another as late as 1756 continued to change organized Freemasonry. So those in and outside our fraternity who believe nothing has ever changed in organized Freemasonry since the formation of the first Grand Lodge might want to spend a little more time reading and looking at factual history in context. Now, a good way to find that context is to ask and identify what events led to Anderson's Constitution of 1723 to be written. Well, when James Stewart became King James VI, he slowly revised and he opened Scotland to the influence of the European Renaissance. And he was inspired by the advances in medicine, military technology, alchemy, astrology, fashions, public works, and even magic. He hired and appointed those who shared his views and his enthusiasm. One of those appointees was William Shaw, and he was appointed in a position for life in a post called Master of Works. Now, that job entailed the responsibility of construction, repair, and maintenance of all the King of Scotland's buildings, public works, and other building projects. Now, the upsurge in the number of prestigious construction jobs under King James led to Shaw depending upon and becoming very familiar with operative stonemasons. And in doing so, he contributed to them evolving into more of a more powerful guild by creating rules and structures. He then commanded them, because he was the master of the works, to keep records. And because of that, we have facts and details about how operative stonemasonry progressively advanced toward the organized Freemasonry that we see today. Now, it was under Shaw's direction and organization that existing stonemason trade in Scotland became more systemized, in that part of the British Isles at least. And it was also during that time that they also became speculative, in the sense that they engaged in rituals with now a philosophical aim, which appealed to men who were not operative stonemasons at all, but began to appeal to men who were drawn to the metaphors, the morality lessons, and the idea of harmony among all men. So the transformation of the Shaw lodges on the Scottish model and speculative Freemasonry ultimately spread southward, as you see in that slide, from Scotland into England and certainly over into Ireland. In its speculative form, it began to percolate, and it's made its way into dozens of existing gentlemen clubs in England, particularly in London. And eventually, in the latter part of the 1600s, speculative masonry became rather fashionable. Now, that circumstance leads us to another question, and we should begin to wonder why, since most structures at the time in London were still made of wattle, daub, and manure. Why were there so many operative stonemasons found in London in the latter part of the 1600s? Well, what accelerated the presence of these operative stonemasons, particularly in London, and their subsequent increase in speculative members can be found in an answer of what happened in September of 1666. There was a spark late at night, likely from an unattended oven at Thomas Farriner's bakery on Pudding Lane in London. It led to a massive fire that consumed and destroyed 373 acres, 80% of the city of London, over a period of 4 to 5 days. That included 13,000 homes destroyed, 84 churches, and the majestic St. Paul's Cathedral. The reconstruction of London would last 50 more years, and require the skills of the greatest workers in stone throughout Europe. You'll see down at the bottom of the slide, there is a photo or a painting of Christopher Wren. He was in charge of rebuilding London, appointed by the king, and he was a speculative Mason. He was also referred to in terms and thought of sort of as the Grand Master, as it were, during that time, since he was the one who coordinated the rebuilding of much of the city through the work of the operative stonemason guilds. Now, in 1682, we know an organization called the Masons Company existed, and many members of that company worked with Sir Christopher Wren on the rebuilding of city churches. And it's, in all likelihood, there were several other Masonic guilds as well, of course. A survey in 1708 tells us that there were many other guilds, and there was quite a bit written about them. And although the records of the Masonic Company were lost, John de Seglieres, who served as Grand Master in 1719, and he was a driving force even in the formation of the Grand Lodge and the Constitution, he penned an acknowledgement that the Masons Company shared a common ancestry with speculative Freemasonry. So it does appear from this record that there were indeed speculative Masons in lodges in London by at least 1682, 25 years before the formation of the Grand Lodge of London. Now, we can also easily trace the influence of those first Grand Masters and how the organization and the young institution of Freemasonry either stood relatively still or advanced from 1717 through its first decade. And the driving force of two Grand Masters, John de Seglieres and George Payne, we see quite a bit of what we find today as standard operating procedure, as it were, in most lodges in the world. We also find the disruptive and the ruinous actions of the sixth Grand Master, the Duke of Wharton, and the contributions or the lack thereof of leadership in the Grand Lodge that offers us today the background that fills in a lot of blanks of how this fledgling institution of organized speculative Freemasonry unfolded, and how that James Anderson, a Scot Presbyterian minister and the writer of genealogies, came to be the person whose name appears as the author of the 1723 Constitution. Now, importantly, and in conclusion, when we look at the political, social, and values of the Enlightenment era during which organized Freemasonry sprang in context with the times and history surrounding it, we can see how the fraternity was destined to spread, change, modify to various degrees in historical aim and purpose, and also fall prey, for many reasons, to a variety of interpretations about what Freemasonry is. So what we can answer with more precision against the backdrop of that era is what Freemasonry was historically intended to be. Now, curiously, centuries of writing about history and origins of Freemasonry by Freemasons has embraced the pursuit of speculative, non-rigorous standard styles that has done little more than perpetuate and advance myths and stories about the institution. And that's rather ironic, since Freemasonry is supposed to be an institution that promotes the search for truth. And as English historian John Dickey shows and tells us through his research, Freemasons' pride in their own history has produced many studies and accounts that are really little more than identity narratives, with the aim being to less discover the truth about its origins than to boost the craft's esprit de corps. And as Dickey states, it's no wonder that Freemasons have always had such a hard time tracing their true lineage and determining exactly what Freemasonry is. Now, brothers, if you're interested in much more than an abbreviated version of how organized speculative Freemasonry evolved and what it was historically intended to be, the two books and the one DVD appearing on your screen are exceptional resources, and they're available from retail book suppliers, internet sites, Masonic book publishers, and in collections of well-organized Masonic libraries. Brothers, we'll now move on to the second part of tonight's presentation and turn the floor over to Worshipful Brother Dan Kimball. Brother Dan.
Thank you, Worshipful Brother John. Brothers, what Brother Bizak's done for us is establish the historical foundation about the organization of Freemasonry as we know it. So we're going to spend just a few moments talking about the aim and purpose of Freemasonry and look a little bit at the philosophical foundations of Freemasonry. Generations of men have spent countless hours attempting to define Freemasonry. His brother Bizak basically laid a foundation for us and told us that we can with accuracy define Freemasonry as the world's oldest and largest organization for men. Masonry in some form has existed from time immemorial, but as we know it and practice it, it's about 300 years old, dating to the founding of the Grand Lodge of England in 1717. Now that's all factually correct, but it really doesn't tell us much about the philosophy or the aim and purpose of Freemasonry. So if pressed, we might further define Freemasonry as a beautiful system of morality, veiled in allegory and illustrated by symbols. And again, while that's factually correct, it really doesn't do much to define the essence of Freemasonry. To find the essence of Freemasonry and to find its definition, to understand its aim and purpose, we need look no farther than the entered apprentice degree. The ritual of the entered apprentice degree provides a simple formula that can be described as the Masonic equation. And that formula quite simply is this: self-discipline plus learning equals self-improvement. Freemasonry is an organization in which men are equipped with the knowledge and tools that allow them to practice the self-discipline necessary for a rewarding and happy life, thereby drawing nearer to their creator, the grand architect of the universe. During the course of the degree, we tell the candidate that the design of the Masonic institution is to make its votaries wiser, better, and consequently happier. In this statement of purpose, which is drawn directly from the ritual, Freemasonry defines itself. No further definition is needed, and indeed to attempt to further define Freemasonry is to ultimately make it into something which it was never intended to be. Freemasonry, through its ritual, defines itself. There is no my Freemasonry or your Freemasonry. There is only Freemasonry, and its definition and purpose are clear and unambiguous. Freemasonry uses the working tools of operative Masons to symbolically teach the lessons of self-discipline. It's said that Freemasonry is a genius system, and indeed it is. It's genius in all of its components fit together flawlessly and in a completely complementary fashion. It's a system in that in order to function properly, all of its components must function effectively. Those of you who may have backgrounds in business and management are probably familiar with the concept of systems thinking. A system is designed to produce a specific result. If a component of the system is missing or not functioning, the result has a ripple effect that may compromise the entire operation. Failure to properly identify the aim and purpose of Freemasonry also produces a ripple effect and does, in fact, produce something other than the desired result. Freemasonry is an initiatory experience. Entered apprentices are initiated into the mysteries of Freemasonry. Initiation is a rite of passage, a ceremony that marks a new beginning. The initiatory experience should be the beginning of a life-changing journey. The experience of initiation requires the preparation of the candidate, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually as well. Freemasonry offers both certain secrets and certain mysteries that are imparted in each degree. The secrets are our various modes of recognition, and they're taught during the course of the degrees. The mysteries of Freemasonry, however, may only be revealed over a period of time, and such revelation, if it ever occurs only through the determined pursuit of the light to which each candidate is introduced in the degrees of Freemasonry. The rite of initiation marks a transformation or a rebirth of the candidate from an existence in darkness to a new place of spiritual and intellectual light. Freemasonry requires us to ask of ourselves the question, is the evidence of such a transformation apparent in my Masonic journey? Freemasonry is universal. It acknowledges the brotherhood of man under the fatherhood of God. It's open to men of all faiths, races, and creeds. The universal nature of Freemasonry is alluded to most clearly when we inform our candidates that Freemasonry brings together men who, without its influence, would have remained at a perpetual distance. The perpetual distance to which our ritual refers are not only geographical distances, but also social, economic, cultural, racial, and religious. While Freemasonry is universal, it's not a religion. Although Freemasonry requires a belief in a supreme being, it does not define such being. The purpose of our ritual is, in part, to purify our hearts and minds, transforming an ordinary lodge room into a sacred space, rid of the distractions of the profane world, and in which the immediate presence of the grand architect of the universe is felt, and in which we reflect upon the construction of that spiritual temple, eternal in the heavens, not built with hands. Freemasonry addresses man's spiritual nature, and yet all of this notwithstanding, Freemasonry offers no plan of salvation. The practice of Freemasonry enhances one's religious beliefs, but cannot replace them or become a substitute for them. Freemasonry can only be experienced actively. Freemasonry is not a passive pursuit. It's quite simple to distinguish between members and Masons. As generations of Masons have been told, the mere act of being initiated into a Masonic lodge does not make a man a Mason, any more than becoming a member of a musical club makes a man a musician. The act of initiation lays a foundation on which a spiritual temple may be built and provides a blueprint for the construction of that temple. But without a lifetime of labor, no edifice will ever rise. The practice of Freemasonry requires implementation of its lessons, and engaging in the work of self-improvement necessitates prolonged and consistent effort. It is, quite frankly, the most difficult work that a man will ever undertake. The benefits of Freemasonry cannot be acquired through a passive approach. The practice of Freemasonry is a call to commitment, and without that commitment, a man may never be a Mason, regardless of the number of years that he's a member. Freemasonry is a call to continued learning. The operative entered apprentice had as his ultimate objective the acquisition of the skills and knowledge necessary to successfully demonstrate his mastery of his art and enable him to engage in the practice of his profession. As speculative Masons, we're called upon to continue to learn so that we too acquire the skills and the knowledge necessary to construct our spiritual temples. And indeed, when we have stopped learning, our personal growth and develop as a man has ended. As we continue to construct our individual temples, it's necessary that we continue to educate ourselves so that our unique temples will better reflect the beauty and the glory of the craft that inspires us. Freemasonry is an individual journey, and yet it's practiced in close association with others who are on a similar journey. Freemasonry is not a fellowship club or a service organization. Fellowship is an attribute of Freemasonry, but alone it is not Freemasonry. Freemasonry ultimately is an individual journey. I'm building my temple, not yours. It's impossible to be the builder of another brother's temple. We meet in lodge to encourage each other, to share our successes, to share our failures, and to equip ourselves for the daily journey on which we've embarked. While we embrace the attribute of fellowship, we must not mistake it by itself for Freemasonry. And that leads to a final point, brothers. Freemasonry is not a casual endeavor. Freemasonry is the work of a lifetime. It is serious work for serious men. And again, to be clear, Masonry has a single aim and purpose: to teach men to subjugate their passions and desires, and in so doing improve themselves and achieve their potential for a more fulfilling life and draw nearer to their Creator. If that reality is not at the center of whatever activity it is in which you're engaged, then what you're practicing is not Masonry. We're not a charity, we're not a social club, we're not a mutual aid society, although all of those things are laudable, and after a fashion, each can be considered to be an attribute of Freemasonry. And indeed, if we're engaged in the practice of Freemasonry, and that is the act of improving ourselves, then all the attributes of Freemasonry will naturally occur. We'll practice charity. We will come to the aid and assistance of each other, and we will have satisfying social relations. The practice of Masonry as intended brings harmony and order where there's otherwise discord and chaos. The defining aim and purpose of Freemasonry is that which is stated so clearly in the interdependence degree. It's our reason for being Freemasons. It's what we came here to do, to learn to be better men, to temper our desires through the practice of self-discipline, and having done so, achieve our potential for a more fulfilling life and draw nearer to the Creator, the grand architect of the universe. I leave you again, brothers, with the Masonic equation: learning plus self-discipline equals self-improvement. And we'll now turn to Worshipful Brother Brian Evans for his portion of this program.
Thank you, Worshipful Brother Kimball. Brothers and friends, I will continue to answer the question, what is Freemasonry, by talking briefly about who is suitable for Freemasonry and what are some of the expectations. First, I want to start by saying that Freemasonry is not for all men, not for most men, in fact. Yes, if you're a good man of proper age, of sound mind, having a good record or good report, and believe in God, you can petition to join Freemasonry. But that doesn't mean that you should, or that doesn't mean that you will be a good Freemason. You see, Freemasonry is not suitable for you, and you are not suitable for Freemasonry if you're interested in joining for personal or financial gain or improvement. If you are solicited to join or were encouraged to join by family or friends. Or if you believe any of the conspiracy theories out there that we have special powers or political influence, and all the other claims that you hear regarding this are pure nonsense. Freemasonry is something that you have and begins with in your heart. And although Freemasonry is not for most men, it is for the right men. You are suitable for Freemasonry, and Freemasonry is suitable for you if, first and foremost, you're willing to be brutally honest with yourself. You must be willing to look yourself in the mirror every day and see room for continual improvement. Now, not with your outside appearance, although most of us do need help in that category, but continual improvement on the inside. Continual improvement in your heart, in your mind, in your soul, and ultimately in your connection with God. Friends, you must be willing to go to bed at night, thinking back on your day and critique how you did as a person, as a husband, as a father, as a brother, as an employee, as a boss, as a friend. If you want to be a Freemason, then I believe that you must be willing to draw a line once and for all in your life, because when done correctly, Freemasonry is absolutely a lifelong journey and a lifelong commitment. Freemasonry, if you're brand new to it, or if you are rediscovering it as an existing Mason, as you already know, is a leap of faith. As a Freemason, you must be willing to take a leap of faith, not only in the beginning, but every day. Every Freemason has taken a leap of faith. It is a leap of faith because you really don't know what to expect when you join at the outset. You may think that you know a little bit about what it is and what you may be close to joining, and you may be right. But there is always still that sense of curiosity and unknown that creates a natural level of fear and doubt in one's mind. All I can tell those who are not Freemasons or those that are rediscovering Freemasonry is that countless men before us have all taken an oath at the altar on our holy book, giving us the right to come together in private and call each other brothers. Brothers that are within an extended family. Freemasonry is absolutely a brotherhood. Essentially, what that means to me personally is every man you get to call a brother is essentially part of your new extended family. There are men in Freemasonry that I never would have met if not for this fraternity. And for that, and I'm sure I can speak for other brothers, are extremely and eternally grateful for our relationships. As a Freemason, you must be willing to be there for your brothers. And you should expect that your brothers will be there for you, within obvious reasons, of course. Wearing a square and compass ring on your ring or a pin on your jacket as a Freemason is just the beginning. But unfortunately, there are men that see it as the culmination of the journey, and that isn't so. Freemasonry and the brothers we are closest with will unknowingly be the ones that help us prepare for our daily lives and overcome challenges when they occur. As brothers, as Freemasons, we all and should always meet on the level. It doesn't matter how young or old you are, how much money you have or don't have, what kind of car you drive or what kind of home you live in. As a Freemason, we see each other and should see each other as equals. No man is better than the other. We do all make mistakes, but at the end, we commit to coming together in unity in the end. And when we come to recognize this, especially within a lodge, a level of unity and respect is formed unlike any other fraternity on the planet. Because at the end of the day, harmony is the chief strength and support of all well-governed institutions. And this harmony that we seek as Freemasons is cemented in our brotherhood with each other. Freemasonry is about education. Arguably, one of Freemasonry's greatest gifts is knowledge and education, the pursuit for further light. This knowledge and education is absolutely boundless and thought-provoking. Continual education, knowledge, study, practice, reflection, and observation of oneself is a staple in the fraternity. Although there are thousands of books that have been written about the philosophies of Freemasonry, the only book that truly matters, aside from your personal religious book, is the book that you are writing every day, whether you know it or not. And that book is your personal life story. When done properly, Freemasonry should offer regular education in lodges and environments. Freemasons believe strongly in enhancing knowledge, both Masonic knowledge and other knowledge. We attend third-party Masonic scholar functions. We believe in Masonic libraries that help make us Masonically smarter, wiser, and consequently happier. Freemasonry, gentlemen, is a daily commitment. As Worshipful Brother Bizak pointed out, the ancient stonemasons that our fraternity was inspired by were the best craftsmen of their time because they were committed to perfection. They were committed to quality and excellence of their skills. Therefore, we as speculative Masons must commit to the same quality and excellence in our lodge and in our fraternity. To do this, we must seek and provide education that encourages thought. Seek and offer accountability to preserve honesty, to provide that brotherly love that creates fellowship for like-minded men, seeking brotherhood and a deeper understanding, appreciation, and connection with life than any financial currency could provide. Our daily commitment to quality and excellence is meant to improve who we are as men on the inside and to inspire us to continue getting better on an absolute daily basis. As Freemasons, we are all seeking self-improvement and the coming together of men of character for a purpose greater than anything that we can ever conceive in our minds, and the ever-longing pursuit of acceptance by God. So what does Freemasonry expect from you? Well, you might be surprised on how simple and obvious the answers are, whether you are a Mason or a non-Mason. And over the years, I've come up with a brief list that should assist you in your understanding of Freemasonry's expectations of a brother or an individual from my perspective. Gentlemen, Freemasonry expects you to be a good person and do your best every day. It expects you to tell the truth even if it's hard, to follow through with everything you say you will do as a man, to be someone that others in need can count on, to be someone who is teachable, to be a gentleman, and to have excellent manners, to respect others even when you may disagree with their opinions. Freemasonry expects you to remain mature and professional during stressful times. And we are now in stressful times as of this recording. Freemasonry expects you to treat others as equals, to maintain a good physical appearance, to remain humble with your gifts and achievements, to work to become a better leader, to eliminate hypocrisy in thoughts and actions. Freemasonry expects you to take full and accept full responsibility and accountability for your mistakes. It expects you to face your fears in life and to help others overcome theirs. Freemasonry expects you to not seek the spotlight, but rather be the person that shines the spotlight on someone else. Surrounding yourself with good people, avoiding bad habits and unnecessary gossip. Freemasonry expects you to not talk about your problems in an effort to seek compassion from others, but rather to give compassion to others who need it. Freemasonry expects you to remove hate, jealousy, and prejudice from your life, to think before you speak, and when someone else speaks, to listen. Freemasonry expects you to be friendly and courteous to strangers, to strive to be the best person that we can possibly be in everything that we do, to follow our desires as long as our desires and passions are good. Freemasonry expects us to create the habit of rendering more service than that which is expected of us. Expects us to maintain faith and courage in our beliefs, to never give it up when trying to reach new goals, and ultimately to always trust in God with all our heart. Freemasonry can make us better men, but it's up to us to seek Freemasonry. At this time, I would like to pass the torch to our very special guest, Worshipful Brother Tom Jackson, past Grand Secretary of Pennsylvania, and Worshipful Brother Bizek, would you please, before he begins, offer an introduction, a much needed and deserved introduction of our special guest.
Be glad to, certainly a much deserved one. Thomas W. Jackson was past Grand Master, or past Grand Secretary of Pennsylvania for 20 years, and Executive Secretary of the World Conference of Grand Lodges for 16 years. Tom may be the most well-traveled Mason from America today, and with a long, glowing career in Freemasonry. His international travels are quite legendary. He holds honorary rank in 20 Grand Lodges around the world, including honorary Most Worshipful Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Iran in exile, and the Grand Lodge of Santa Marina, and honorary membership in 107 Grand Lodges. And by the way, he has received medals of honor from 32 Grand Lodges around the world for his services to Freemasonry, and has presided over 18 Masonic bodies on local, national, and world levels. A few years ago, adding to the untold awards, titles, and accolades Tom's received, he was recognized by being depicted on a new official postage stamp of the nation of Brazil for his services in promoting universal Freemasonry. He holds a bachelor's degree in biology and chemistry from Shippensburg University and a Master of Science degree in zoology from Penn State. And he served 17 years in the field of education on secondary and college levels. His works published in educational, scientific, and Masonic journals, newspapers, and publications throughout the world. And Tom has spoken on the topic of Freemasonry in over 40 countries. He's a member of a number of boards, much too lengthy for this introduction to recount, but he's also an honorary member of the Rubicon Masonic Society. Brothers, please welcome the Honorable and Distinguished Right Worshipful Thomas W. Jackson. Brother Jackson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, John. I was asked to speak if it were the last opportunity I would have in 5 minutes to discuss Freemasonry. And I found that it took me far more hours than 5 to prepare this short presentation. Freemasonry is the oldest and most significant fraternal organization. It was created, or at least exalted, by some of the greatest thinking minds in a period of history that was dominated by class distinction. It has had, in all probability, a greater impact upon the evolution of world civil societies than any organization outside of organized free religion. The most widely accepted theory of the origin of Freemasonry as we know it is that its roots are probably anchored in the country of Scotland, dating back to the late 1500s, within the skilled builders or operative masons of the great castles and cathedrals. However, Freemasonry as we know it today, speculative Freemasonry, had its beginnings in the year of 1717 in London, England. This theory proposes that as the age of the great cathedral building was reaching its climax, persons of distinction were accepted into the highly restricted cadre of operative masons. Eventually, as the demand for operative masons continued to decline, these new personages became the dominant force within this cadre. Fortunately for the world, it was these men with vision who structured the foundation of an organization that was based more upon the quality of the man rather than his status at birth. However, even as this organization continued to attract the highest levels of class society, such as royalty and for the nobility, it also accepted those from the professional classes, the merchant class, the military, and other classes of society, and seated them in lodge rooms as equals. This dramatically different concept quite possibly formulated the establishment and practice of democratic thinking. There have been many characterizations expounded on the Masonic fraternity in attempting to define it and its purpose, some more esoteric than others. Perhaps the most explicit is that it is a beautiful system of morality, veiled in allegory and illustrated by symbols. The simplest definitions, however, are probably more definitive.
Worship Brother Jackson, could you hear me? I hate to interrupt. You have muted yourself, I believe, by accident. And there we go.
You should hear me.
You did a wonderful job. Would you mind starting back at the greatest evidence of its success?
Yes, sir. Sorry about that. The greatest evidence of its success, however, is not only its longevity, for it is the longest thriving fraternal organization that has ever existed, is its historic composition of its members. Freemasonry can proudly claim that within its ranks have been some of the greatest men, statesmen, and leaders in multiple and diverse disciplines that ever lived. Consider these names: Amadeus Mozart, John Philip Sousa, Audie Murphy, Douglas MacArthur, Charles Dickens, Rudyard Kipling, Sir Alexander Fleming, Norman Vincent Peale, Winston Churchill, Danny Thomas, John Wayne, Gene Autry, Kit Carson, Thurgood Marshall, George Rogers Clark, Francois Voltaire, Buffalo Bill Cody, and I could go on, naming hundreds of other familiar names who found within the confines of Freemasonry a reason to belong. Many of the early patriots who contributed to the creation of this nation also found reason to belong, and if it were not for men like George Washington, Marquis de Lafayette, Paul Revere, Benjamin Franklin, Patrick Henry, John Hancock, and countless others who found solace in the Masonic fraternity, there may not be a United States of America. Freemasonry may not have made these men great, but their membership contributed to making Freemasonry great, and it would be highly improbable to conclude that they were not influenced by the philosophy of Freemasonry. Today, we wear their membership as a mantle of pride. However, even as we claim our success by our members, we also wear as a mantle of pride the names who were society's greatest nemesis and were also the greatest enemies of Freemasonry. Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Francisco Franco, Joseph Tito, Benito Mussolini, the Ayatollah Khomeini were responsible for deaths of tens of thousands of Freemasons simply because they were Freemasons. So we wear with pride the mantle to claim as our brothers some of the greatest benefactors of mankind for 300 years, along with the mantle to claim as our enemies some of the most diabolical men who ever lived. If the philosophical precepts of Freemasonry were accepted and practiced universally, it could very well be a template for universal peace. However, Freemasonry will be to every man what he makes it to be within himself. It can be indeed a way of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Right Worshipful Brother. I'd like to read a sentence you just said. If the philosophical precepts of Freemasonry were accepted and practiced universally, it could very well be the template for universal peace. That is a beautiful phrase, a beautiful sentence. I want to thank you for your time this evening. It is an honor to be with you, sir.
My honor to be with you.
Brothers and friends, at this time, I would like to invite anyone to open the floor for discussion. We have laid all that on the line to do the best we can in the time allotted to answer the question, what is Freemasonry? At this time, you may type any questions you have in the chat bar or raise your virtual hand and request to speak, and we can call on you, or you may simply unmute yourself and request to speak and address your questions or comments at this time.
Worshipful Brother Brian, do you mind if I pose a question?
Absolutely.
Actually, I have two, and I'm going to pose these to you, but mainly through you, because I would invite responses from anybody who would choose to. Part of your presentation was about suitability for Freemasonry, so I'm going to give you two scenarios, if I may. You have a man who has heard of Freemasonry and contacts you about potentially petitioning your lodge. And after a brief conversation with this man, you find him to be a just and moral and upright man whose behavior and character is what we're looking for. But he doesn't possess the intellectual capacity to do the required memory work that we ask for, nor does he fully appreciate or is capable of appreciating exactly what the aim and purpose of Freemasonry is. Is that man a suitable candidate for Freemasonry?
That is a very good question, and also a very difficult question to answer, because I would have questions for this individual that I would want to gauge his answer to further determine his interest levels. So not to be, to politically sidestep your question by any means, I think at the end of the day, and I have spoken with probably hundreds of potential candidates within our lodge who have petitioned or requested petition. So I've been fortunate to be in the unique position of our lodge, growing with Freemasonry. And a large majority are excited by the romanticism of the craft, the George Washingtons, the Voltaires, the symbolism. But I find that even some of the men who are Freemasons are similar, but a lot of them don't stick around after, and it's probably because they aren't getting what they wanted to get. But what I'm looking for, and hopefully I'm answering your question, what I'd like to see is someone who's hungry, someone who maybe doesn't have all the skills of any kind, not that you have to have specific skills to be a Freemason, but somebody is genuinely interested in learning, engaging, someone that asks a lot of questions, and is interested in being a team player, that believes in the good of the fraternity, the optimism of it. And you can tell by the questions that that person asks if they're a good candidate. Now, I also have my little pitch, if you will, that I would ask somebody or tell them. I'd say, listen, if you think you're going to join Freemasonry and just to get a ring, or think you're going to get out of a speeding ticket on the way home, you're here for the wrong reasons. So I try to challenge them and press them a little bit, not to make them feel uncomfortable. In fact, the opposite. I hope that by me challenging them with some of my questions, it excites them about the possibility of what is, quote unquote, behind the closed doors. Because, we're a chain, and we want links in the chain that are going to make us stronger. In fact, I always ask, what can you provide to make us better? We're going to try to make you better, but what skills do you have, or how can you make us better? And are you willing to make us better? It's a difficult question, but it's one that, more than anything else, you want to see someone who's hungry. And then I have gone out and said, now, if I'm on an investigation committee for you, and if I approve you and you leave here next year, I'm going to be very upset. So I'll throw out a little comment out there just for fun, to let them know that this is very serious, and we are going to take you seriously, and we hope that you will take us seriously as well. I don't know if that answered your question, worshipful brother, but I tried.
Well, I'm going to give you my second scenario now.
Okay.
This fellow in the first example has a twin brother, and his twin brother also is a good and just and upright man. But unlike his brother, he is completely cognitively capable of doing all of the work that's required of him in Freemasonry. However, he believes that as he is in the here and now, he has absolutely no need for self-improvement. Is he a suitable candidate for Freemasonry?
No, I think that if somebody who thinks that they don't need self-improvement, they're here for the wrong reasons. I think the wisest man realizes how much he doesn't know, and is always looking for answers to questions that he has. So, no, I think if you don't think you need any help, then there's nothing that Freemasonry can do for you.
Brother Evans, may I comment?
Please.
I helped form a traditional observant lodge in Ohio called Arts and Sciences, and we would meet and have dinner and fellowship before the meeting. And anybody that was interested would come to that meeting and meet with us. When we talk about guarding the West Gate, I really question a team of three brothers going out to somebody's house and talking to them. Are you really accomplishing what you want? And our brothers at Arts and Sciences, it would take a couple months of them coming to dinner, meeting the brothers and talking before we would even accept a petition. And I think that's where we've gone wrong, where we got a lot of brothers who just wear a ring. It takes more than just a team going out and talking to a potential candidate. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. I would agree completely. It's a relationship. And even brothers who are Freemasons, you still don't get to know them until after years later, and you spend time with them. So I would agree. I think it's something that we should be patient. I think prospective candidates should be patient. I think we as Freemasons should be patient, not only with ourselves, but with our lodges, with our brothers. We need to try to recognize what we're in and enjoy the journey and be patient in the journey and look for opportunities when others might not see them. Worship Brother Bizak, what are your thoughts on that? And I don't think we can hear you.
On Dan's second part of the question, a man who believes he is already a spectacularly good man has no room for improvement. I don't know that Masonry is going to do much for him, but then again, maybe it'll humble him to some degree, so perhaps it would. On the first part, we've discussed this question in other formats, but I think one of the points that was made was that if someone can't understand our precepts, are we responsible to help them learn them? Are we responsible to help them understand it? Is that part of the purpose of Freemasonry? So I think there's two sides of that as well.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Don.
If I might interject, one thing I'd emphasize, and I mentioned this one time to a minister who challenged me, and a good friend of mine, who challenged me that we say we accept only good men, but we ignore the ones that need our help the most. And I pointed out to him then that you cannot make fine porcelain out of bad clay. It's not our purpose to reform men. That's their function, the church's function. We are to take the good men and make them better men. It's difficult to improve upon a man that thinks he's reached the apex of his knowledge. And I might point out, relative to the three-man investigating committee, in most of the Grand Lodges of the world, it'll take a minimum of 1 year investigation before he's even voted on or approved for it to be voted on for acceptance.
Worshipful Brian, I was going to comment on our practices at South Pasadena Lodge here in Southern California.
Please.
And we would not give anyone a petition that hasn't been coming on a fairly regular basis to our lodge for at least 6 months and has come to at least a couple of the lectures that we have monthly and a certain number of the dinners, and we counsel them to come to the stated meeting dinners and to talk to various people, because when we do give them a petition, while we have maybe not as stringent of investigation as some other places, but one of the things that we do though when we read the petition, we ask, how many brothers in this lodge have met this man and feel like they know something of his character. If we don't see quite a few hands coming up, we say then we're going to put this over, and the brothers that have signed his petition will counsel him. You got to know more people before we can put you to a vote. That's been, in my experience, the last couple of years, a good guard at the West Gate. The other thing we do is our members who are really engaged in our Masonic education program will make it a point for somebody that's a prospect and would sit down with them and go through in fair detail all of the stuff you have to do beyond the Grand Lodge requirements for memorization, in terms of having to attend a number of classes, having to write something, having to make a presentation on what they have what they have grown from with regard to the preceding degree. And we also tell them it's going to take 1.5 years for you to go through this, and you're going to go through with a group of 6 other people that are doing, other men that are doing the same thing. And the people that are good people and are interested in Freemasonry, but really aren't interested in that education aspect of it, we direct them to other local lodges that are fine, and tell them we hope to see them from time to time at some of our lectures, because that's what our lodge is all about. So I think being frank with them and the prospects, taking our time, and asking, does anybody know this guy, before we all sit down and vote. Not everybody is going to know, there's nobody that everybody is going to know them, but we're not going to vote on somebody that only 2 or 3 people know them.
Right. I think that's excellent practice. And I think that's also fascinating for us all to hear, and perhaps viewers that would watch this down the road, that we in each lodge has our own individual processes for the way we do things and manage and run our lodge, which is one of the fascinating and unique things about Freemasonry. As organized and structured as we appear and claim to be, we also have our own styles in how we operate as a lodge or as a fraternity. And I think that's fair. And I think oftentimes the answer is it can be case by case. And I would probably agree with Worship Brother Jackson about, from a business mind, I think a lot about business, and I relate a lot of things to that, is only do business with people that want to do business with you. It's difficult to make an unmotivated client motivated. But I can see both sides. I think there needs to be a genuine interest in someone's heart that they want and need and are looking for self-improvement, because that's really what it is, I believe. We have some really good questions and comments that have come up here, and what I would like to request is that we try to make these questions and comments as open forum as possible, so we can have some more verbal conversation specific to this series of lectures. And Worship Brother Johnston with Rubicon, would you mind to unmute yourself? And then you had a question.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. There was a slide in one of the presentations, and it appeared to be Gerald Ford wearing a Masonic apron. And my question was, first, was that in fact Gerald Ford? And if so, was he an active Mason before, during, or after his presidency? Does anyone know?
That was, in fact, President Ford, who became a Mason in the 1940s, prior to, I think during actually his first run for Congress. He was initiated, passed, and raised in Michigan, his home state. And I don't know how active he was, but he was very supportive of Freemasonry throughout his lifetime. I suspect Right Worshipful Brother Jackson can tell us more about President Ford's formal involvement. I included him as a slide in that part of the presentation to illustrate that Freemasonry brings together men who but for their involvement in the fraternity, would have remained at a perpetual distance.
Yeah, I can't add anything to the activity of Gerald Ford, other than he was supportive of Freemasonry, but I never see anything written about his activities within the craft.
Thank you, Worshipful Brothers.
I've seen him with a fez on, so I know he's also a Shriner.
Tim Reddick, past master in Ohio, you had a question that you presented. Would you mind unmuting yourself and offering that question?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I was curious. I think I know the answer to this, and this is in regards to American Freemasonry in particular. But while I agree with just about everything that was spoken to this evening by the presenters, I just wondered, in their opinion, how widely held these precepts are in the United States primarily.
Worship Brother Jackson, would you like to take that one?
Well, I can say this with no reservation. They're more widely held and accepted outside of the United States than they are in the United States. Freemasonry is far more revered and accepted within the craft in other countries than we have. North American Freemasonry has been lax in its teachings of Freemasonry. I've been active now for 57 years, 58 years, I guess. Today's my birthday, so it's probably 58 years. Anyway, I find that the appreciation of the meaning of Freemasonry within the members of the craft is greater outside of North America than inside of North America. The greatest mistake I think that we made in North American Freemasonry was failure to guard the West Gate. And in attempting to reverse that, we've been willing to take on functions such as raising money for charities and campaigning for membership, which has caused the craft to lose more of its luster within the country than it has outside. To give you an example, today I have received probably 50 telephone calls, emails, WhatsApp messages wishing me happy birthday, almost all of them from out of the country. It's just a different feeling that we experience. And that's what we're trying to get back through some of the traditional observant Freemasonry.
Well, happy birthday, Right Worship.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Worshipful Brother Reddick, my perspective is strictly that of Kentucky Freemason. I don't have any real experience outside the jurisdiction of Kentucky. The Research Lodge in Covington, to which I belong, William O'Ware Lodge of Research, conducted a study about 18 months ago, and we found that 56% of the men who are currently on the rolls of the Grand Lodge of Kentucky have never been back in lodge since the day they were raised as a Master Mason. They've had no further contact with their lodge after that point. They are literally names on a list. I think if you start at that number and work backwards, it's pretty easy to come to the conclusion that the views that you've heard this evening are not the views of the mainstream of Kentucky Freemasonry. I'd like to turn your question back to you. What's Ohio Freemasonry like?
Well, again, my experience is somewhat limited across the state, although I have traveled some. And I would agree, I would say that Ohio is similar to your analysis of Kentucky. I don't have numbers to support that, but just based on my personal observations.
You know, we live in a society where we are constantly, and it's so easy to judge other people. When I think someone who knocks on the door of a lodge, if they're willing to judge themselves and allow and use the tools of Freemasonry to do that, that person is an excellent candidate for Freemasonry. Some struggles I've seen with Freemasonry, just to continue conversation and food for thought here on this topic of what is Freemasonry. I think that we should let the tools of Freemasonry be the primary guiding source for knowledge and information for our younger brothers, not necessarily a veteran Mason who may have advice, so to speak, to give. Not saying that one shouldn't give advice, as there are men in Freemason that probably could stand to take their own advice sometimes, so to speak. But the tools of Freemasonry give everything that a new prospective Mason or veteran Mason should be able to find and look for and be willing to judge yourself, and with a very harsh line, and be honest. I think it's easy for us to judge others and give others advice when what we really need to be doing is using our ears and our eyes and reading and learning versus speaking as much about that advice.
Brian, let me give just an example or two of what I'm referring to as far as appreciation in other countries. I was coming out of one of the Latin American countries one time, and they pulled 4 of us out of line and called us back one at a time into a separate room from all the rest of the passengers. And I was the last one in line to go in, and I went in and they had my check-in luggage there, and they had already gone through all of the carry-on luggage. And I had my apron case in an outside sleeve that it fit into. And this customs agent opened the apron case and looked at it, and he said to me, "Mason." I said, "See." He said, "Oh, I'm sorry, you can go on through." It's amazing how many times that's happened for me in my travels. But that's the type of respect you carry in most other countries. I just wish every North American Freemason would have the opportunity to travel and really see what Masonry is. The movers and shakers of this world, in much of the world, are still the Freemasons.
Thank you, Worship Brother. I'd like to change it up just a little bit and continue the conversation, but a little bit differently. We have a gentleman on this evening who is not a member of our fraternity. And Antonio, I'm going to ask you to speak in a moment, if you don't mind, and I feel confident that you're going to do just fine. And really what I'd like for you to do is just be honest. I did not prepare you for this, so I apologize, but we've spoken many times. I know you've spoken with Brad Drew at our lodge, who is past master of Latonia Lodge in Kentucky and is currently our senior warden, our senior deacon. I'd like to get your take on what Freemasonry is, honestly, and engage you in some conversation. If you wouldn't mind unmuting yourself and introduce yourself very briefly to our audience, and we can go from there.
Certainly. Hello, everyone. I'm Antonio Mantica. I recently petitioned Lexington Lodge number 1 to join, and due to unforeseen global circumstances, have been unable to continue with that process at the lodge. But to answer your question, I'm sorry, did someone say something? Am I?
Oh, you're good. Go ahead.
Hearing things. I think prior to visiting Lexington Lodge for the first time, when I saw Freemasonry, I saw the textbook, the George Washington painting with his apron on, the men who founded the country version of it, and realizing more and more about it being a path of learning and self-discipline, like we were talking about today. Learning more about taking good men, making them great, making great men better. Qualities have shifted my view to what Freemasonry is a little bit more for the better, certainly.
So you have participated and been a part of quite a handful of our virtual educations during this time. We appreciate your patience. What is it that you are seeking individually? And there is no right answer. What is it that you're seeking? What are you sticking around for? What are you hoping for? Where do you see yourself 5, 10 years from now as a Freemason? Now, that's a lot.
Of course. My background is actually in physics and from undergraduate and graduate school. And I think physicists spend a lot of time thinking about truth and thinking about pursuing truth, and maybe less of the relationship of how can I better myself as an individual by pursuing truth, but more how can I uncover more about the world by pursuing truth. And I feel like I have those feelings already, and I see a lot of Masons who have that too. But instead of from this, I want to discover truth because I'm curious to know about how the world works, there's a lot more of, there's a sort of a deeper level of, in my pursuit of truth, I'm learning more about myself and the relationship that I have to the universe. And so if through conversations with fellow Masons that I can learn more about that, learn more about myself, learn more about my role in the universe, my relationship to the architect who put it together, or if I can help others to better understand their positions, that's exactly what I want to achieve in those 5 years.
Excellent.
Of Freemasonry. So
Thank
thank you for asking.
Yeah, thank you for your
Sorry,
time.
I don't mean to get metaphysical or anything like that, but
Thank you, sir. We have another gentleman on who is also not a Mason at this time, and if he would feel comfortable enough to unmute himself, William Hamilton. If you're willing to do so, introduce yourself and tell us in your mind what Freemasonry is and what brought you here. William, we'll come back to you. If you are able to unmute yourself, then we can ask you at that time. I'd like to call on a couple of our Rubicon brothers. So if you're a member of Rubicon, be prepared, take a sip of water, because we want to hear from you. And I'm going to go, so William's having trouble with his microphone. No problem. When you're able to fix it, William, we'll come back to you. I'd like to go to Worship Brother Barry Eastham first, because I know he has lots of excellent ideas, thoughts, opinions, and advice. Worship Brother Eastham, what are your thoughts this evening? What is Freemasonry to you?
Well, it's obviously already all been said. I mean, it is a way of life. It's a philosophy. It's some of the things that you were touching on earlier. I've had this conversation in the last couple of days and weeks with a couple other different brothers. When you come into this fraternity, you take, you're not just joining, you're becoming. And that rite of passage that is initiation, true initiation, affects you internally. Everything that we do, every word that we say, every movement that we make in the lodge is calculated to elicit a psychological and a spiritual response from the inside. And when those things take root and, the alchemical change takes place in you, that's when the true work actually starts. And as you progress down that path, there are, and you continue on your path with Freemasonry, there are things, like Brian said, they're expected of you too. I mean, there are some sacrifices you have to make. You have to put time into it, or you're not gonna, I don't think you're going to yield a full harvest from it at all. But there is a fine line. You can become, there is a point that you can become consumed with it and get lost in the machine, so to speak. I don't know if any of you guys have trouble with Masonic funerals in your area like we do, but in our area, we only have a couple brothers that do Masonic funerals, and I'm one of them. All up and down Eastern Kentucky, there's only a handful of us. And I have been to several funerals where the family members were very leery about even having us do a Masonic funeral. They could not stand the Freemasons because it took their father away from them. And I mean, that's a real thing. So to the guys that are just petitioning, it's going to sound contradictory because I'm going to tell you, there's a sacrifice that is expected of you, but you need to learn how to say no too. And there is a fine line there. So just understand that going forward, because this is something that you take on, and it is a life pursuit. You have your entire life to do this. You don't have to do it all at once. Just take it in slow, make the right choices, and let everything that's put forth to you let it take roots and do its own kind of distilling, and you'll be fine. And I'll shut up.
Excellent advice. Excellent advice. Thank you, brother. Worship Brother Brad Drew. I know you always, I know you're a man of few words, but I'm sure you have a few here today. What is Freemasonry?
How did I know you were going to call on me next? So I think, well, first of all, Barry read what I was going to say. I sent it to him earlier to review, and he just read my response. So, no, I think, we've covered a lot tonight. So, Freemasonry to me is certainly a tool for me to challenge myself. I'm in the opportunity, or I have the opportunity at Lexington Lodge to be that first person that many, potential candidates and prospects speak to, a chair that you filled for many years and now I've taken kind of over. And I get that question a lot from guys off the street, or, their family members were Freemasons. They read about it on, online. They watched a Nicolas Cage movie and they're curious about it. And so I've heard a lot of responses, and I've been able to kind of give my response to a lot of guys. And really for me, simply, it's just a system or kind of a tool bag that I can use to challenge myself and have others challenge me. I enjoy a good discussion and good dialogue, sometimes a good disagreement, but I think for me, Freemasonry is a system that I can learn from and go out and produce a better father, a better husband, a better friend, a better son. I think that most of that responsibility falls on my shoulders, not anybody else's. While I love my brothers and I love my lodge, the responsibility to be a better Mason and learn from that comes, most of that falls back on me. So if I don't have the urge and the desire to learn, to challenge myself, to get into conversations, then, I'm never going to grow as a Freemason. But I think simply put, it's just a tool belt to help me grow in whatever fashion I need. If I need to learn to meditate and reflect more, I can look at certain aspects of Freemasonry. If I need to, think of, I have a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old at home. If I need to learn about patience, I can go back and think about some things that I've learned throughout Freemasonry. So for me, it's really just a toolkit to life.
Thank you, brother. Where's Brother Martin with Rubicon Masonic Society? Would you give us your thoughts? We are still not hearing you.
You still can't hear me?
How about now?
There you go.
Okay, I apologize. I too find Freemasonry to be a mechanism to promote a way of life, a framework in which directs and maintains an attribute or characteristic that worshipful Brother Kimball talked about, and that was self-discipline. Self-discipline to maintain perspective and fortitude to pursue information which makes you look at yourself in a critical manner, which leads to one actually reshaping the lens in which they view the world. I know when I came into Freemasonry, I like most candidates and initiates, I had no idea what I was actually walking into or what to really expect from it. I knew from talking to Freemasons that they were people of good character, and then I wanted to align myself with individuals of good character to ensure that I wouldn't stray from trying to better myself. And what I found is that Freemasonry is a never-ending journey. It's one where knowledge that I acquire leads to more interest to pursue that new information, which opens up avenues of other information and acquisition of knowledge, which totally changes some ways in which I view the world, some ways in which I thought I was very strong in interacting with others that I came into contact with, changed, and I realized that I do have room for improvement, and I will continue to have room for improvement until the day that I take my last breath, because it is a never-ending journey, the pursuit of truth and how I actually interact with myself in the physical world and the spiritual world, where I try to improve in my relationship and communion with God. So for me, it is a way of life, and I think it's something that will probably has been repeated. And I'm thankful and grateful to be a part of it because it certainly has made me a better individual. And I hope that in receiving that from the brothers and other like-minded individuals, I'm able to share that with others that I come into contact with, not only brother Masons, but also non-Masons that might look at me and say, that's an individual I might like to emulate myself after. But it's a never-ending pursuit and one that I've enjoyed, and the journey is ongoing.
Thank you, Worship Brother. Brothers and friends, the hour is growing long, and I would like to offer the floor for any final comments from anyone regarding if you'd like to answer the question or offer your thoughts to this series on what is Freemasonry. This would be the time to do so.
Brother Brian, if I could summarize Freemasonry in one line, I would say it's a journey of self-improvement that you take with like-minded men.
Excellent. Thank you, brother. Yes.
Enter, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
Personal observation and then a very short story. We say Masonry doesn't change, and I'm a firm believer that in many respects. What I've found now in my 49th year, beginning my 49th year, is that we change and find things in Masonry as we get older, as we get wiser, as our needs and requirements change. Masonry has our answers. It has our support network. And going back to the beginning in 1972 when I was raised, and I won't go into the full details, I found myself in Lodge really green, as you would imagine, and made a decision that if I wanted to be a part of these men, then I had to change. I had to measure up to them. They were not going to measure up to me. And I guess the 49 years says that I followed that reasoning. So thank you again for a lovely evening, and I look forward to more.
Thank you, brother, for your comments. Any other comments? Right, Worship Brother Jackson. Any final comments from you, sir? I know you have some more words of wisdom up there, especially since it's your birthday.
Just to express my appreciation for what you all are doing in Kentucky. I think you have at least my experience in the few times I've been down with you and what I've seen in the programs that you presented over this past, 13, 14, 15 weeks. It's probably the best programs anywhere in the country. And I thank you for that contribution to the craft. Keep up the.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Right, Worship. We have the easy part. Worship Brother Kimball, any final comments from you, brother?
Happy birthday to Right Worshipful Brother Tom Jackson.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother. And Worship Brother Bizak, Vice Chairman of Rubicon. Do you have any other final comments?
I'll echo Dan's comments. Tom, happy birthday to you from everybody.
Thank you,
and may you have all these in-country wishes for another 8 or 9 decades in the world of Freemasonry.
Outstanding.
Be that.
At this time, I would like to ask our chaplain of Rubicon, Worship Brother Lyle Van Outer, if you could please deliver a closing devotion and close us out.
Let us pray, brothers. Great architect of the universe, we offer thanks for the opportunity to meet in the face of our adversities. Be with and nurture all those who are sick and distressed in their lives. May all our efforts bring your peace and beauty, that we may manifest the primal will to good, which eternally creates and sustains the universe. Amen.
Come on to be.
Mother B. Thank you, worship brother.
Are we done?
Brothers and friends, our next meeting is September 28th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we will be addressing the progressive next step of this topic of a journey of discovering Freemasonry, entitled The Path to Becoming a Freemason. If you are already on our RSVP list, then you don't need to RSVP again. You will be notified accordingly throughout the week. We will also send a replay of this recording to you at the appropriate time. If you know of someone who may enjoy this series, please feel free to invite them, Mason or non-Mason, to RSVP at rubiconmasonica.com/RSVP. Brothers and friends, it is always an honor to be with you in this environment, although we are looking forward to getting together in person at some point soon. We wish you nothing but health and happiness, and may we always be happy to meet, sorry to part, and happy to meet again. We hope to see you in 2 weeks at our next meeting. Thank you again, brothers. Have an excellent night.